Hi everyone, we'll go ahead and get started with the webinar. My name is Allie Carlson. I am one of the supervisors in the billing office. We are the team you contact if you have any questions regarding the university bill. My hope for today is that you leave this webinar with a better understanding of the university billing process, and we will go from there. So today we are going to talk through the monthly billing process here at Iowa, talk about payment options, due dates, and other helpful topics as well, including financial aid disbursement and the guest parent access. I do quickly want to stop and talk about the guest account and the importance of it. So, the University of Iowa is heavily regulated by FERPA, which is the student privacy regulation that basically says we can't disclose any details about a student's billing account with anyone other than the student unless the student has granted them permission. So, the way to get permission for these accounts is by setting up a guest account. So the student would do that through MyUI and give parental controls to their parent or anyone in their student support network. So if there's anyone in that network who will need to view the bill, pay the bill, or contact our office on the student's behalf, we have to have that guest account in place in order to give you any information. Even if you are paying the bill, if we don't have that guest account in place, we still can't give you any information. So something very important to get set up. So student U-bills are available electronically in MyUI the first business day of each month. So this means we do not send out paper statements to students or parents. If you need a printed version of the bill, I will show you where to print that here in a few slides. We do also have some helpful how-to guides listed on our website for some of the common questions before that first bill is due. These include how to read the U-bill, add a bank account, make an online payment, and also how to invite that guest account user. So the first U-bill for the fall semester will come out on August 1st. It will be January 1st for the spring semester. So these 2 months are when we bill for tuition and fees, housing, and meal plans. You'll notice that the August bill comes out prior to students being on campus, so it is important to have your student or you yourself as a guest, if you have that, go out to MyUI after the 1st of August and start looking at the U-bill and getting familiar with the different pages and navigation in there. We do send out email notifications to students' University of Iowa email addresses when that bill is ready to be viewed. If you have the proper guest account access, guests will also receive this email notification. And it is important to note that the email itself does not contain a copy of the bill. It's simply a notification letting you know that the bill is ready to be viewed in MyUI. Another key date to keep in mind for the U-bill is the 22nd. This is our typical due date. If the 22nd lands on a weekend or holiday, we'll generally bump that due date back a day or two. So as long as you have your minimum due paid by the 22nd, you will not have a late payment fee for that. And then just to point out, the August due date for that first bill is the 24th this year, which is the first day of classes. And we get a lot of questions on whether we offer an installment payment plan, and the answer is yes. We have what's called the deferred payment plan, and it allows students to break up their tuition and fees, housing, and meal plan costs into the first 3 months of each semester. So for the fall, that would be August, September, October, and for the spring, January, February, and March. If you pay anything less than the total balance due that first month, you'll automatically be enrolled for the deferred payment plan. So there's no formal enrollment process that you need to sign up for. And then on that third month's bill, you will see a $20 deferred payment fee that we assess for each semester that a student takes advantage of the deferred payment fee. And it is important to note that the only charges that can be deferred in those first 3 months are the tuition and fees, housing, and meal plan or contract charges. Anything else that is billed to the account is due in the month that it's billed. So this could include any charges that your student makes to their Iowa One card. It could be books at the bookstore, different convenience stores on campus, performing arts and athletic tickets, even course fees and library fines, things of that nature, all considered miscellaneous. Okay, so this is what the U-bill actually looks like in MyUI, and we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. So this will show you a summary of the U-bill. It will show you what statement month we're in, the due date for that month, and under the green banner will clearly show you the minimum due by the due date of that month. If you need a printed version of the bill, you can click on the Print U-bill button, and it will download a PDF copy that you can then print. You can also navigate to our payment screen by clicking on Pay U-bill. The middle section will show you any alerts or messages on the account. If you're ever unsure of what an alert or message means, feel free to contact our office and we'll be happy to help you through that. And then the right-hand side links off to our website and those how-to guides that I spoke about earlier. The bottom three sections are all expandable once you click on them. And the top one is what you'll want to form the habit of reviewing the first of each month. So this will show you your detailed statement, charges and credits. If you need to look back at a prior month statement, you can click on this drop down here, and we keep about 18 months worth of past U-bills out there for students to go back to. The middle section will show any recent account activity on the account. Anything you see in this section will be officially billed to the student the following month. And then the bottom section will show you the payment history. So anytime you make a payment to the U-bill, it will show up in this section. So if you're ever wondering if the payment that you mailed in last week has been processed, you can come out here to verify. And then speaking of payment options, there are several ways to pay the U-bill. The first is online through MyUI using a checking or savings account. This can be done through the student's MyUI or the guest account. If you prefer to mail us a payment or come into our office, we are located in the University Capital Center on the second floor above CVS Pharmacy. And here we accept personal check, cashier's check, and money order. If you plan to mail us a check, if you could please print the U-bill and detach the payment coupon that's included on the statement, or on the check itself in the memo line, write the student's name and ID number. That will help us pinpoint the correct student when we go to process the check. We also accept credit card as payment. It is important to note here that there is a 2.75% non-refundable service fee that is associated with all domestic credit cards used. So if you plan to pay with a credit card, do keep that service charge in mind before making that payment. And then we get a lot of questions on how to pay with 529 or other college savings accounts. And it is important to contact your plan administrator and just see what they need from you in order to submit payment to the university. Oftentimes, all they need is the student's name, ID number, the amount being requested, and where to send the funds. The U-bill for the fall will come out on August 1st, as I mentioned. A lot of 529 plans send us paper checks, which can take up to 2 weeks to be received and processed by our office. So if you're planning on paying with a 529, proactively go out and look at the account early in August. That way you can get the ball rolling in hopes of getting that check to us prior to the due date of the 24th. A lot of 529 plans are now offering electronic payment as well, which definitely cuts down on the processing time for that. So if that's something that you're wanting to do, contact your plan administrator and see if that is an option. So in addition to showing you all the charges or assessing all the charges on the U-bill, our office also handles the aid disbursement of financial aid. So as long as the student has everything done on their MyUI financial aid to-do list, they will see on their August 1 bill all of the estimated credits for their financial aid, which is going to reduce their out-of-pocket costs. So we'll talk about that here a little bit too, but also if the student is the recipient of an outside scholarship, and that could be from your religious organization, your high school, things of that nature, please send those to our office here listed on the screen. We do also on our website have a scholarship submission form that you can download and complete and mail that along with the check. So if the donor itself is sending us the check directly, you can point them to this form as well. And it really just helps us with processing the scholarship in the way that the donor is intending. So next I want to show you the aid disbursement page in MyUI. So any semester a student is a recipient of financial aid, and when I say financial aid, that could be scholarships, loans, or grants. They will want to go out and review this screen prior to the start of the semester and just ensure that in the top section, every piece of aid that they're expecting to receive, they see in this top section. The middle section will then show how we are allocating those financial aid funds to the bill. And then after paying all of the eligible charges on the account, if there is money left over, at that point it would start being refunded out to the student. So this bottom section will show you what piece of aid is being refunded, by what method, and the amount. The aid refunds start to go out to students the first week of classes. And the quickest way to get that refund is by setting up a direct deposit account in MyUI. If the Parent Plus loan is part of the student aid package, it is important for the borrower of that loan to also go out to their guest account and set up their direct deposit for any excess funds. We also do have a paper form on our website that you can download and complete and mail back to our office and do it that way as well. And then jumping ahead to tax time and the 1098-T tax form. So the 1098-T tax form is the form you'll use to take advantage of any educational related tax deductions. We will have these available for students to download and print from MyUI by January 31st of each year. If you have the proper guest account access, guests will also have a link to this download. And that will, show you all of the tuition qualifying fees paid for that calendar year. And I know that was a lot of information jammed into 12 minutes. So we realize you're probably going to have questions and it's a lot to absorb. So we are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And again, we're located in the Old Capitol Mall above CVS Pharmacy. So you can call us, email us, or drop into our office with any questions. We do, as you can imagine, get quite busy the closer we get to that first bill generating and also being due. So if you have questions early, feel free to contact us as early as you have them, just to avoid any delays in our response as we get closer to that busy time. And then just to leave you with a quick checklist of things to do prior to the start of classes. Determine who's going to be responsible for submitting the U-bill payment. Set up any guest account access with those who will need to view the bill, pay the bill, or contact our office with questions. Set up your banking information in MyUI for any potential refunds, and that includes the Parent Plus direct deposit as well. And set a reminder in your calendar to review the U-bill after the first of the month, and that the typical due date is the 22nd. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jess for financial aid.
Perfect. Thank you, Allie.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jess. I work in the Office of Student Financial Aid as an assistant director. Today, I'm going to be covering a lot of very basic information about our federal aid and how to apply for that and get it to the bill. I've been looking at the Q&A to kind of answer as many questions as possible. We're getting more and more, and there are a lot of financial aid questions. So I will try my best to answer those as I go through the slides. However, I would recommend if you have any lingering questions that do not get answered, it's probably just in your best interest to call our office or email our office so we can give you more individualized guidance and help. All questions really kind of depend on the student and their overall personal factors. So if I don't address any of your questions, I am not ignoring you. Just go ahead and give us a call. So, without further ado, let's first talk about financial aid for the 2026-2027 academic year that's going to start here in August. So, the FAFSA is going to be the application for federal financial aid. That is what FAFSA stands for. It's your federal application for federal student aid. So, I'm sure most of you have already done this, but it is important to know that if you have not yet applied or completed the FAFSA, there is still time to do so. The FAFSA is going to be completed online at studentaid.gov. Here at the University of Iowa, we do have what's called a priority filing date for the FAFSA each year. So for the 26-27 academic year, this was December 1st. But there are some financial aid programs, specifically federal financial aid programs, that don't ever run out of funding, such as the Stafford loans and the federal Pell Grants. So, again, if you have not completed the FAFSA, there is still time to do so, and we always recommend completing the FAFSA each and every year. When you complete the FAFSA, that's going to consider your 2024 income information. So the FAFSA is always going to look at what we call prior year income information. So this upcoming year's FAFSA is looking at 2024. So if you've had any reductions to your income due to a job loss or other circumstances, please reach out to our office to discuss this. This is something that we can definitely look at and see if we can work with you to kind of manipulate that FAFSA to be closer to representing your true financial state. Once that FAFSA is submitted and received by our office, your student is able to log into their MyUI account and they can check the status of their financial aid under the financial aid and billing tab of the MyUI. Aid offers also live in the MyUI, and we send out an email to the University of Iowa email address for your student once those are available for viewing. Excuse me. It's also really important to view the financial aid to-do list in MyUI. This kind of lets students know if there are any outstanding documents that still need to be submitted to us in order for the aid to go through to the bill. I also want to mention that we communicate with students primarily through their University of Iowa email addresses. So it's really important that we get them into the habit of checking that regularly so that they are not missing out on any deadlines or paperwork or just information that could hold up their financial aid. There's also lots of updates that we send out, especially right now. We're in a season of a lot of changes happening in the financial aid world. So as parents, please try and get your students in the habit of checking that University of Iowa inbox. With that being said, we do send emails to parents. However, as a parent, Allie was kind of speaking to this earlier with FERPA laws, your emails are very, very vague. It'll tell you that your student's gotten an email and to check with them. So always follow up with them if needed. So when it comes to your financial aid offer, there's going to be a lot of components on there that you're going to be reviewing and trying to understand. So a couple of things that you want to know about your offer is first is it's important to understand that those costs on there are only estimates. So your students' costs may look a little different depending on their overall residency status. So what state are they coming from to attend the University of Iowa? What program or college they're in. And then the big one that really varies from student to student is what residence hall and dorm room type are they in and what meal plan do they have. When it comes to tuition, the Iowa Board of Regents sets tuition each year, so there are going to be changes in tuition rates that you'll see from year to year. When it comes to your housing costs, to know what those final costs are, you can always refer to the housing contract. Otherwise, those final amounts will be on that August 1st U bill. When you look at the offer, it's going to show you a section that gives you the total estimated costs for the year, and it's going to subtract that offered financial aid from it, and it's going to give you your total estimated amount due to Iowa. Again, this is going to show you a yearly amount, but it's important to keep in mind that we bill on a semester by semester basis. So you can kind of look at that final amount due to UI, split it in half to get an idea of what you'll owe in the fall and then what you'll owe in the spring. There's lots of other estimated like expenses that are listed on the offer too that you can consider. So other things that can traditionally come up for a student as they're completing their degree. So maybe not expenses that are necessarily charged to the bill, but ones that come up such as like books and supplies. Every student's going to need that in some way, shape, or form, right? Personal expenses. This will look different from student to student, or transportation costs. Those costs will look different for a student coming to the campus from Des Moines versus California. And then the last piece that I will mention here about the offer is work study. So This is also listed on the offer for students, and it shows how much a student is eligible for. It's in the other resources section. I will dive in a little bit deeper into the work study program in just a bit and like how it works. It tends to be a more confusing federal aid program, but just so if you're looking at the offer, if your student is eligible, it'll be towards the bottom right-hand corner with the other resources section. So next, I want to address the student record consent form. So Allie had talked a lot about like the guest MyUI account and how that is required in order for billing office staff to be disclosed any information to anyone other than the student. So the Office of Student Financial Aid has something similar, um, but it's just a little bit more in depth, I would say, than the guest account. So we require students to complete the student record consent form in order for any of our staff to discuss your student's aid with someone other than them. So, with adhering to FERPA, what we do is we have students provide consent to anyone that they choose. They have to create an authorization code. So, the authorization code is what our office will ask for before we're disclosing any information. So, if you do not know the authorization code, you're going to need to check with your student before we can move forward in our discussion. Um, so when your student makes this, they need to share that authorization code with you. Make sure that you are comfortable saying the authorization code out loud. It's gotten better over the years, but we have had some interesting ones, and it is something that we need to verbally hear from you. Okay, so through these next few slides, and you can go ahead and advance, Allie, I'm going to break down all of our different types of aid. So we'll start with scholarships and grants. So scholarships and grants are pretty well known. These are considered our gift aid or our free money. So this is aid that a student does not have to repay. The FAFSA is typically going to be your application for grants, and you are automatically considered for those if you're eligible. So you typically have to fall within a certain range of having financial need to be eligible for the Pell Grant specifically. Um, it's also important to kind of be aware that scholarships that are awarded from us here at the University of Iowa do have renewal criteria that your student has to meet for that scholarship to be renewed for each year. And these can be, the renewal requirements can be viewed in MyUI under the financial aid and billing tab. So make sure that your student is looking at this. Some of our scholarships require a FAFSA to be filed by the priority deadline. So this tends to be a criteria that can get missed from time to time by students. So again, have your student review that renewal requirement so they know what GPA they need to maintain and if they need to file their FAFSA early. If your student is receiving scholarships from outside of the University of Iowa, so say it's from like your employer, your community, high school, whatever the case may be, we always recommend that students report those funds to our office. So your student can do this in their MyUI under the financial aid offer page. And in there, there's a little button that says like report additional funds to financial aid. This is important because what we do with that information is we add it to the financial aid offer to give you all a heads up on, is this going to have an impact on other aid that's already on the offer? And then if not, then it just gives you a better idea of what your final estimated amount due will be to the University of Iowa. And then lastly, I just want to touch on the University of Iowa Scholarship Portal. So this will open in the fall for the 27-28 year. So something to always keep in mind for the portal is typically when it's open, it's going to be for the following academic year. So it's pretty much everything is wrapped up for this academic year that we're about to step into. Um, some scholarships are going to become available to students in the portal, like in their second, third, or fourth year, because it's really cater to students that have an established academic record within their program of study at Iowa, because the portal mostly holds a lot of departmental and program scholarship opportunities. So again, it usually opens around in September, so your student should be checking that periodically. November is usually a good time to really look because that's when a lot of deadlines typically are starting to hit. And then our next piece of aid that I'll talk through, as I promised, is work study. So this is definitely a piece of financial aid that we get a lot of questions about. It can be kind of confusing. I think the most common misconception is that people believe like, oh, I'm going to work in this job and it's going to pay for my studies. not a bad assumption because it's directly in the name. That is not what we do here at the University of Iowa. So if your student is eligible for work study, they're basically going to find a part-time job on their own and they're going to be paid biweekly for the hours that they worked. So what they do with the funds that they earn is entirely up to them. They can save it for the next semester. They can use it for their personal expenses. They can use it for books and supplies, whatever the case may be. When it comes to finding a work study job, again, that is the falls on the student to do. So they're responsible for finding their own job. We usually are referring students to what we call Handshake. So it's a job portal where students can go in and look for any on-campus or even off-campus opportunities. One thing that we get asked a lot is if work study is required to be able to work on campus. And I've got some numbers up here for you on the screen just to give you an idea that it is absolutely not required. We've got about 7,000 or so students that work on campus every year, but only 1,000 of them have work study. So if on-campus employment is something that's super important to your student and they really want to do it, but they don't have work study, there's very much opportunities for them on this campus. Um, and then the one final tidbit that I'll add here, like I said, the student is going to be paid directly for the hours that they worked every 2 weeks. And what we do with those funds is up to them. But how they're paid, what's kind of unique, I guess you could say, about work study is that the employer on campus is paying half of their wages while the work study program is paying the other 50%. So technically that student would be cheaper to hire and retain as an employee, but again, not at all required to work on campus. Okay, so I'm going to get more into loan options. This is one where if you have been paying attention to the media and are aware of a lot of the changes that are happening in the financial aid world, I'm going to briefly touch on some of these changes. But if you have more questions, I would definitely recommend giving us a call. So for loans where the student is the borrower, first step is completing the FAFSA. So when folks complete that FAFSA, students are going to be offered a fixed amount in either a subsidized and or an unsubsidized federal loan. So subsidized and subsidized loans tend to be the same loan. The biggest difference is that the subsidized loan is going to be interest free while your student is in school, whereas the unsubsidized loan is going to accrue interest right away. So the interest rate is going to be fixed for the subsidized and unsubsidized loan. And for the 26-27 academic year, that interest rate is going to be 6.52%. If you're planning for your student to take out these loans, there's going to be a couple of steps that they need to take. So first, they're going to need to complete a master promissory note, which is basically your contract being like, yes, I know these are loans, and yes, I'm going to repay them in the future when I'm done with school. Entrance counseling, this is just reading through a lot of information on being a loan borrower. I kind of call it like your crash course on being a loan borrower. And then there's the student loan decision, which is where your student will go into their MyUI and formally accept either the full amount that they were offered or a custom loan amount. How much a student is offered in the federal loans is dependent upon their grade level. And when I say grade level, I mean how many credits, college credits they have completed. So if your student has enough credits to be deemed, let me back up, $5,500 for students that are considered first year. If your student has enough credits to be considered a second year student, they'll be eligible for 6,500, and then students in their third and fourth year are eligible for up to $7,500 in the federal Stafford loans. And these amounts are split between the fall and spring semester. Now, the biggest change that we're going to see with the subsidized and unsubsidized loan options going into next year is that students will now receive an amount per semester based on their enrollment intensity. So, in other words, however many hours they're in is going to determine how much aid they're going to get, or more so, how much in their loans they're going to receive for that semester. Overall, a student needs to be enrolled in 6 semester hours to be eligible overall. But now we're going to start seeing students like if they're even in just 11 hours, they're going to see a reduction to their loan. If they're in 9 hours, and so on and so forth. And then finally, I'll just mention your student does not have to make any payments on these loans until 6 months after they graduate or drop below half time, which is 6 hours. Okay, so Parent Plus loan is another loan program through completing the FAFSA that we're seeing some changes to. So With the Parent Plus loan, if you are interested in borrowing this loan, you have to complete a Parent Plus loan request on the federal aid website each semester. So you would have to do an application for fall and then a separate one for spring. You can do each of the applications at one time. We typically tend to recommend that just to avoid any, missing or delays in getting that request submitted. When the request is submitted, it does include a credit check. I always like to note that the credit check for a Parent Plus loan is a tad looser than you would think for like a private lending company. They're not necessarily looking at factors such as like ability to pay. They're looking at larger financial circumstances, I guess you could say, such as like bankruptcy, for example. Um, Parents, when you apply for the Parent Plus loan, you do have the option on that application to choose to defer making any payments while your student is in school. And then the final piece for the Parent Plus loan is
Mhm.
also completing your own master promissory note. The interest rate for 26-27 is going to be 9.07%, and there's a 4% origination fee that happens. So what that means is whatever amount you receive per semester, 4% of that amount is going to get skimmed right off the top before it disperses to the billing office. And this here, my last two bullet points are really the biggest changes that are occurring to the Parent Plus loan going into next year. So it used to be the case that when a parent applied for a Plus loan and they're approved, they can receive a loan that fills basically the rest of the gap in their student's funding. So it can go up to the student's remaining cost of attendance. That is changing significantly. So now a parent can borrow $20,000 per year per dependent student that they have enrolled. And then the overall borrowing limit is $65,000 per dependent student. So 3 years of $20,000 worth of funding in this Parent Plus loan, and then in that fourth year, it would be 5,000. So we're expecting a lot of transitions over to the private lending sector. So this is kind of what I get into in my next slide here is just addressing private loans. So if this is something you think you might fall into this bucket because the Parent Plus loan isn't enough, or you would just rather go the private loan route, here's some info, kind of some basics for you. So with a private student loan, the parent or the student can be the borrower. If it's the student borrower, typically we're seeing them apply and be approved with a cosigner. If the student is the borrower, even with a cosigner, they are required to complete what's called private loan counseling with our office. So this can be done over Zoom or in person. And really the overall goal is to help students understand their borrowing and only borrow what is needed. So we go as far as projecting out 4 years worth of borrowing, both at federal and private levels. We show them like how much repayment could be based on like how much students are earning when they graduate from that particular program. So we really try to go in depth and make them aware of what they're getting into and get them thinking about repayment well before their senior year. And if you're not really sure where to even begin when it comes to private student loans, we do have what's called a preferred lender list on our website. So basically, this is kind of like a good launch pad if you're not familiar with borrowing private loans. We list a bunch of borrowers that have worked with the University of Iowa students in the past, that have talked to our staff countless times, and it includes a lot of that helpful info that you would want to know, like interest rates and whatnot. So as far as your timeline goes, you should have aid in place as soon as possible. We typically, when we're doing different presentations and orientation, we're letting folks know, like, try to aim for the 4th of July. That's a good time because it does take a couple of weeks for everything to get processed and for the dust to settle before aid can disperse over to the billing office and be applied to the bill. So 4th of July is a really good time. One other thing I'll note in relation to private student loans, with those private loan counseling appointments that are required, we do book up very fast. Usually July through about September, October, we're really booked up. So the sooner the better that your student gets that all finalized and they get scheduled in their MyUI for that private loan counseling appointment. And then October will be here before we know it. Like May is already gone. So for 27, 28, just start thinking, maybe set a reminder on your calendar. The FAFSA will open on October 1, and our priority deadline is going to be December 1st. So please make sure you get your FAFSA filed right away, get it in early so you're not losing out on any possibilities of aid considerations. And then lastly, just some reminders I want to leave you with. Checking your financial aid to-do list. When in doubt, always log into your MyUI and just check that to-do list. That's where we're going to ask for any documentation that we might need from you. That's where you can go in and complete all the loan steps, including accepting them, if you're going to borrow them, completing the student record consent form. This is also, I believe, an item that would show on the financial aid to-do list. Make sure as the parent you are aware of what that authorization code is, because we will be asking for that authorization code before we disclose any specific information to you. Reporting any outside scholarships to our office. As a reminder, you do that in your MyUI under the financial aid offer page, and then just making sure your students monitoring that UI email. We're gearing up to a part of the time of year where we might start sending a lot of emails and different updates. So make sure they're checking that. And again, like Ali said, that's where U-bill notifications are sent. So just make sure they're getting into that really good habit. But yeah, lastly, we're all here to help. I know financial aid is a very stressful, and just paying for higher education can be a lot. So we are here to help. So please let us know if you have any questions. Like I said, I know there's lots of questions in the Q&A. Feel free to bug us here at the financial aid office, and we're more than happy to help you out. And
Okay,
that's
should
it
we
for
go through
me.
some of the Q and A's
Yeah,
live or okay.
yeah. I'll just start from the top. So when should I apply for a Parent Plus loan? You can start doing that now. I know we won't start showing or reflecting those on the financial aid offer quite yet. So if you do apply and go to check the offer and you don't see it there, you're welcome to call us and we can check to see if we have your application. Allie, will veterans benefits be reflected on the U-bill?
They will. If you have specific questions, I know there's different pieces of veterans aid. Most of it would be like VA 33, I believe it is. We have a department with our team within our department who handles all of those. So if you have specific questions about veterans aid, um, you can email our office, ubill@uiowa.edu, and we'll triage you to the correct person for those questions. But as long as the funding is into us in time before that January or that August bill, it would be on your first month's bill. But it kind of depends on the timing.
Perfect. Um, If a student recently changed their major, when should they expect their new financial aid award based on their new program? So this one kind of depends. Our office has not started reviewing students for any possible like grade level changes or program changes. Typically, when it comes to a student changing their major, we typically only update the offer if it's an overall college change. Mostly because like when students go from one major under College of Liberal Arts to a different College of Liberal Arts major, it doesn't change their cost information or their offer. But if you would like the offer to be updated to show that, your student can always call us and we can easily do that for them. Another good one about outside private scholarship reducing initial amount of aid promised by U of Iowa. This is another question that it depends. I would say if you have private scholarship funds that you're going to be receiving and you already have other like scholarship aid on the offer, please call us. Because yes, sometimes receiving another scholarship can impact other scholarship funds that exist on that financial aid offer. It all just kind of has to do with your student's financial need that's determined by the FAFSA. How do we make financial aid go off of the student-only income? My daughter is paying for her own college. So in the world of financial aid, there are very few ways that your student is considered an independent student for FAFSA purposes. How it's determined is how they answer their dependency questions on the FAFSA. So if they cannot answer yes to any of those, it's going to require the parent information to be included on the FAFSA, even if the student if it's been determined that they are going to be the ones responsible for paying for their education, the parent information still has to be on the FAFSA. To give you all an idea of what those dependency questions look like, like, are you married? Do you have dependents of your own? Usually, the point that tips the scales for students to go from dependent to independent for federal aid purposes is their age. So they have to be turning 24 years old during that academic year to be considered independent for federal aid purposes. That's another one we get a lot of questions on. So feel free to call us if you want more answers or want to just kind of flush out that answer a little bit.
Will banking information entered for the fall semester be held for the spring, or can I be cleared out for a different account? Once you put in, I think this is probably talking about the refund account. If you put an account in for your refund account, it will remain your refund account until you decide that it's not. So it will continue forward, depending on the an upcoming semester. You can always change your refund account or even your the account you want the U-bill to pay out of by doing that through MyUI. So you can have multiple bank accounts. You can only have one account set as your refund account, though. So um, we have some how-to guides on our website for that question. But if you have additional questions or need help with that, just contact our office.
Okay, so this next one, there might be some others that are very similar to this. So, lots of questions about like scholarships or merit-based aid, if that's going to be automatically taken off, like on the bill. The answer is yes. The only type of financial aid that requires a formal acceptance in order for it to be applied to the bill is going to be the loans. Everything else that is free money is sent directly to the bill, no approval needed by the student. Um, there's kind of a two-parter to this question. They also asked if 10,000 is awarded, will it be 5,000 a semester? Typically, yes, that's how it happens. I would say just for your own confirmation, look at that offer because it does break it down semester by semester. So if you see fall 5,000, spring 5,000, then yep, you are absolutely correct. There's a question about rate of federal loans. I don't think that they have officially published them on studentaid.gov yet, but you can just Google federal student loan interest rates for 26, 27, and it comes up. Um, will it be added for all years? So how interest rates work for federal loans is like for 26, 27, there's a set interest rate for those loans, and then there's going to be a new interest rate for 27, 28. So whatever they borrow in 26, 27, that interest rate is going to follow through the life of that loan until it's paid off. So whatever they borrow per academic year determines the interest rate for that loan, if that makes sense. The school offered my daughter two different scholarships by letter of admission. Do you have the? Yes. So this is the same thing. Merit aid is automatically applied to the bill. Um,
If we have a child that graduated from Iowa, will we use the same Hawk ID to gain access or resubmit for a new account? You will use the same Hawk ID for additional children for that guest account. So yes, keep remember your Hawk ID because that will you'll still use it for any additional students.
FAFSA was approved. There's two components, subsidized, unsubsidized. Do I need to do any paperwork or will the university automatically adjust? So your student will need to complete their financial aid to-do list. So the entrance counseling and the master promissory note, those are two things done on studentaid.gov. And that is where they'll complete those two items and then they'll accept the loans on their to-do list as well. And then getting work study requires that the FAFSA is filed and your student has financial need. Work study is technically an aid program that has limited funds. So this is one where if your student did not file by the priority deadline, they might not have been considered for it. So you are always welcome to contact our office and see if your student is eligible for work study and or if it can be added. Thank you, Allie. Allie is answering a question of show the address again for payments. So there's that for you all. How many credit hours is second and third year for qualification? So your student is considered a second year student if they have completed, I have to think, 30 credits, and 60 credits makes them a third year. So if you believe your student has that many college credits and they do not have the proper loan amount, the federal loan amount based on their completed credits, just let us know. FAFSA interest rate is annually or monthly? Interest is charged on a daily rate, if that is the question. So for an unsubsidized loan, that would be having an interest charge on it on a daily rate. Are federal loans subsidized or unsubsidized? Both. It depends on the level of financial need that the FAFSA has determined. So if your student has some sort of financial need, they're going to be awarded that subsidized loan, regardless of a student's level of need. I always kind of say, like, if a student's family makes six figures or they make less than that, they're automatically going to get $5,500 in the federal loans. It just depends on that need if they'll get some subsidized or all unsubsidized.
Can you pay part payment from a 529 and the remainder from another account? Yes. You would just want to reach out to the 529 plan and let them know how much you're requesting. Um, so you can go into the UBEL, determine the total amount and then how much you want to use of the 529 funds, and then just request that amount.
Perfect. The question about dependent veterans aid. I don't know if you know anything about this, Allie. I would say maybe contacting IVETs on our campus.
Yes. Yeah, I
Uh,
don't know anything about this, but yeah, I would contact the IVETs.
yeah, IVETs. It's spelled exactly how it sounds. So IVETS. They are very helpful over there. There's a question about merit money and if it's split. It says it depends. I would say to find this info, if it's a University of Iowa scholarship, it's going to be split evenly. If it's coming from an outside source, say like your community, your employer, you would need to talk to them to determine if it's being split or not. Um, where in the settings does the student grant you bill access?
They go, ooh, let me pull that up if you want to go to the next one, Jess.
Yeah, you bet.
Just sorry.
There's one about benefit of Parent Plus loan versus private loan. Do private loans allow deferred payments? It depends on the lender. Honestly, this is a question I would recommend calling us about to just kind of talk through, both of them, getting all the info about Parent Plus and private. It also would be helpful for our staff to see kind of like your students' information.
Okay, so the guest account access can be set up through MyUI in the student information section.
Hmm.
They
Yes.
should be able to set their guest account access up there.
Perfect. And guest account and student record consent are all on the same page, so you can kind of do them all at
Mhm.
once. Um, okay, has the change for the maximum Parent Plus loan option gone into effect for 26-27, or will it go into effect 27-28? So these changes are going to affect July 1 of this year. So this is impacting students that are starting for 26-27 this fall. If you're going to take the federal loan, do you need to go in and decline it? You can. You don't have to. Sometimes that just kind of helps you get a better idea of what you're going to owe to the university if you're not going to take those loans, because we will, if they're declined, we'll update the offer and remove those. Um, we cannot apply for any private loan without the student counseling appointment. How to be sure the parent is part of this appointment with the student? So students schedule a private loan counseling in their MyUI. If you would like to be present for that, you can either, if you're physically with your student, you can just sit with them. We welcome that. Otherwise, your student can just forward you the Zoom link. But overall, we require the student to be that in that appointment since they are the borrower. This one is talking about back to dependency for federal aid purposes. It says we were informed that if the student is no longer claimed on the parent's taxes, this establishes their own residency, that the FAFSA would be based on their own income only and not include the parent. This is not correct. FAFSA dependency is not based upon your students being claimed as a dependent or not on your taxes. What the FAFSA is looking for is how they answer those dependency questions. So again, like, are they active duty military? Do they have children of their own? Are they married? Are they going to be turning 24 years old before that academic year is over? So most of the time when folks come to us saying, I think I should be independent, more times than not, the answer is you are still going to be dependent for aid purposes. It says under the My Loan Steps, it says you need to complete forms, but the link provided does not take you to any forms to fill out. I would need to see the account and what form you are referring to. So if you have concerns about that, please call us. Both private loan or Parent Plus loan would need to be repaid 6 months after graduation, and the same for federal sub and unsub loans. Yes, some private lenders have a little bit longer of a grace period. Like I've seen some that go up to 9 months, so that would depend on the lender. But Parent Plus loans and then subsidized and unsubsidized is all under that 6 month grace period rule.
Outside scholarships, if it doesn't specify a semester, which semester do I put it on in the portal? Um, we usually say with outside scholarships, it's to the student's benefit to split the scholarship 50-50. That way, you're not getting so close to your cost of attendance amount or kind of splitting it up so that you have that advantage of those funds in spring as well. But if they don't specify, I don't think it's up to you. But we typically say it's best to split it.
This one's just asking about helping the family weigh pros and cons of different types of loans. Please call us. We would be more than happy to do that with you. Allie, do you know the next one?
Ooh, academic credits. Ooh, I have no idea what the IB curriculum even is. I would contact our office and we can try and help. Otherwise, I'm wondering if it is actually like an admissions or registrar question.
This would be something that folks would submit during their SOAR page. They'd be able to indicate with their AP credit status, their
Ah,
International Baccalaureate curriculum. So it's something that they would do through their SOAR appointment, either with their advisor or on the SOAR page.
so Connor, is it correct in understanding that it would more so impact like what courses a student enrolls in versus like their bill?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So when your student is coming in with like high enough AP exam scores to count as certain college credits, that is not going to make an impact on the bill. It might, in the long run, it might shorten how long your student's here on campus, but your student's university bill is going to be based on how many hours they're enrolled in per semester, regardless of what they've transferred in, as far as AP results go. Good question.
If the scholarship check is made out to both the student and the university, should they sign it before sending it to our office? Yes, they can. They don't have to. As long as this if it's made out to the university and the student, we can endorse that check in the university and do not need the student signature, but it doesn't hurt to have them sign it as well.
Can we can we get the loan ahead of July 1 and not get the limit of 20,000? You may not. Um, this is a rule that starts July 1, and you would be, even if you applied before July 1, you're applying for a loan that's going to disperse after July 1. And this rule is impacting aid that is dispersing after July 1 of this summer. So, does a Parent Plus loan start accumulating interest on day one or at graduation? It starts accumulating interest at the point of disbursement. So that could be like if we're in the middle of the fall semester and you're just now getting around to applying for it, once that loan has dispersed to billing, that's when the interest starts to accrue. This is kind of like that last one you answered.
Well, this one's made out. The scholarship earned is paid by check to the parent, should the check be signed over to Iowa or cashed. If it's made payable at all to the University of Iowa, they will require it to be endorsed by us in order to be deposited. If the check is made solely to the payee of the parent, you could cash that check or and then use it to pay towards the bill, or better yet would be to sign it over to the university. That way we can apply it on as an award rather than just a straight payment.
What are the criteria requirements for the 27-28 scholarships? Is the value comparable to the scholarships received by the new students? So the criteria for the scholarship portal for 27-28 is going to be all over the place because departments set the criteria and they determine the overall application process. So can't really speak to what those criteria or requirements are. Um, Typically, when we're seeing students get awards from the scholarship portal, they tend to it kind of depends, but they tend to be on the smaller side. So think like $1,000, maybe $2,000. So it can be comparable to the scholarships that admissions awards to new students, but that also depends on the student. So not the most clean answer because the scholarship portal is a little wonky and like the financial aid office doesn't determine those things. So um, are there scholarships available through Iowa each semester or only one time a year? So students are always considered for merit-based scholarships at the point of application to the University of Iowa. That's the only time they're considered for those merit-based awards. So, like if you have a student that has something from the Office of Admissions, they're not going to be reconsidered for a different scholarship or more money from that same scholarship in future years. You're done. The only way to be considered for other scholarships in the future is to go through the scholarship portal, and nothing in there is a guarantee, but it is a yearly process. So we always encourage students to keep applying each and every year. When will a student learn if they receive a GPA-based scholarship? So if your student has been admitted to the University of Iowa, the Office of Admissions has already awarded those types of scholarships. And they stopped awarding in February or March. Students can start applying to 27-28 scholarships. I believe the portal will open in September is when they can start looking, and departments and programs of study add them at different times. So they'll need to keep checking periodically. I just answered this question or similar to students should not anticipate receiving a similar National Scholars Award after if they meet renewal requirements for their National Scholars Award, so their GPA and maintaining full-time enrollment, that's going to be renewed for 8 semesters or until they complete their degree, whatever comes first. But Office of Admissions or like the university is only looking at their GPA and their courses or their overall enrollment per semester to make sure they're maintaining those renewal requirements.
Is it easy for divorced parents to pay part of the U bill? Yes, you would. The student would sign both of you up as guest accounts. That way everyone could see the bill. There is not a way to hide payments from the bill to say maybe mom doesn't want dad to see how much she paid on the account. We cannot do that. So um, all three parties, the student plus both parents, or however the situation is, they will all have access to the same bill. So it can't kind of be, we can't hide things from one or the other or make it so that payments aren't seen transparently.
Okay, and then we have one more, and then I think we can wrap up after this. I do want to note, like, we have our contact info on the screen right now. So if you have billing questions, you are welcome to call them. We are also available this week if you have any questions. We definitely understand this was a lot of information we threw at you. And all of you probably have a lot of great specific questions. So please feel free to call us or email us. This last question about financial aid, it's asking, does the loan cost the cover the cost of a study abroad program? And it does. Typically, any financial aid that the student has on their offer for the semester in which they would like to study abroad, that aid typically can be applied. I don't know that I've ever seen financial aid not be applicable to study abroad costs unless it's from a super specific department and they want it applied to certain costs. But yes, that's definitely an option if your student's considering study abroad.
Okay, I'm gonna take this last one live. Can you hide the bank information? If you have I mean, regardless of whether you have a guest account or not, or have everything in the student's MyUI, we do not, we mask all of our bank account information. It shows the last 4 digits and then gives you a nickname for the account. So there will never be transparent bank account information anywhere in my UI. The best way to do it to be even more separate and secure would be when your student sets up your guest account to enter the banking information there. That way it's only you who sees that. And then on the student account, it will say like mom paid or paid from mom to student. So it will just show you how the funds are coming in from the guest account, but it won't show banking information.
Okay, perfect.
All right, I think we can go ahead and just jump off now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.